And as I'm approaching this beautiful source, creator, God light, whatever you want to call it, again, they didn't use language. Everything's just this unconditional love. As I'm approaching it, I want to merge. I want to become one with this light. And the pool, it's like you're being gravitationally magnetized to this light. And at the same time that that's happening, there's all these other images that I'm being flooded with. But when I say flooded, it's like in the most rhythmic, welcoming, warm way. All of these images. And as I'm approaching this magnetic light and wanting to become one with it, the angelics make it very clear. You have the opportunity to return to this. This is the light from which all things come. And all things return. And you are a fractal of that light, as is all things. However, you can return now or you can return later. You have to choose.
They gave you a choice. Okay.
I got a choice in my scenario. And you have to remember, my body's lingering. I'm comatose. I'm not fully dead. I didn't flatline. Okay. I was comatose 3.5 days. So this is somewhere during that 3.5 day journey.
Hi, everybody. It's your girl E, and this is another episode of Vision Rebirth. This is a podcast where we explore life-changing stories of near-death experiences, outer-body experiences, divine dreams, meditations, and encounters with other beings. And today we have a special guest. She's a former psychotherapist. She's also a healer, teacher, and channeler, writer, and her name is Brooke Grove. How you doing, Brooke?
I'm fabulous. Thank you for having me, Erica. How are you?
I'm doing good for sure. Definitely excited to hear your story.
Right.
So for you were in graduate school at the time of your near-death experience. So can you just talk about just generally what was going on at that time in your life?
Yes, I had actually become ill when I was working on my first master's a few years before. And I had kind of thought it was a byproduct, as the medical system had told me, of having too much on my plate. I was taking 20 credits, I was getting 2 MAs at the same time. But intuitively, I had also pushed my own boundaries. I'd been guided to really use personal trauma as part of my graduate research. And I did that. And I started having physical symptoms. Now, everyone said it was stress. And so I kind of let that go. I persevered onward, went through my licensure process, and then went into my doctorate. And as I'm in the doctoral phase of getting ready to defend the dissertation, that same illness comes back. But now it's coming back with a vengeance. And suddenly, things that I had been able to work through and serve through and continue my education through, I no longer had the stamina for.
So it sounds like it was your sickness like almost triggered by sort of working too hard and trauma? Like, was that kind of like what was it triggered by that maybe?
For me, it's multifaceted, yes, but in the graduate degree, the earlier degree, I definitely pushed beyond what I ought to have pushed beyond. And there was legitimate stress in the schooling and in, maintaining a 4.96 GPA. And so I was definitely overdoing it in that regard. But at the same token, I now understand energetically, I was not ready to open up those portals into my own personal trauma, and I pushed past it. So when I get to the doctoral phase, the illness has now become truly physical, but it has deep psychological roots.
Interesting. Okay. And so you were essentially sick.
Mm-hmm.
And you were at your parents' house, correct?
Yes, I was.
And that's when you passed out, and then when you passed out, you hit your head, and then that triggered everything. Like, can you explain just that portion before?
Certainly. So I had gone east for more advanced medical care as I wasn't congruent with the different diagnoses I'd been assigned. Every time I saw an autoimmune specialist, they would change the diagnosis. So one minute it was rheumatoid arthritis, the next minute it's lupus, the next minute it's something called Wegener's granulomatosis. All share one common pathway,
Wow.
which is severe inflammation going to the organs. We knew my lungs were severely compromised. I was in critical care pulmonology at only 29 years old. I was also
Jeez.
in critical care rheumatology. They were saying I was going to be wheelchair bound in my 30s. And yet I kept having other organs get involved and it was never consistent. So, as a young diagnostician myself, as a clinician, I didn't trust that the nomenclature, the diagnosis was constantly shifting. And so I went east as Hopkins University is over there, and my parents happened to live adjacent to it. So I was awaiting an appointment at that hospital, which is notoriously difficult to get into. And so I was just kind of waiting it out and going to be with my family, hoping that I would at least have assistance with the locked joints and the pulmonary issues and the things that were making it hard to live. Well, they happened to be on a cruise and were headed back right before I was to be seen by the medical professionals. Well, prior to their arrival, my lungs begin to have an issue, and at the same time, my joints begin locking. And when I say they
Okay.
begin locking, I mean like can't get out of bed, can't brush your teeth, like they just turn purple and they just lock. And so I'm locked in this basement apartment alone. And I call my doctors and I say to them, like, the pain's horrific. I'm not going to be seen by the hospital for a while. I don't know what to do. I'm alone. And they say in no uncertain terms, without any concern, double up your meds. You only have to get through this flare up. It's okay. They're safe. Nothing's toxic. We're all in communication. I spoke to every specialist I had, which were about 4 at the time, all through the same hospital in Los Angeles. And I don't see anything wrong with it if all 4 of them are telling me to do it. I'm in horrific pain. I listen. What we did not understand at the time is yes, the lungs were involved and the kidneys were involved. We knew that. We knew the joints were involved. What we did not know is that my liver was also compromised. When they instructed me to double up the medication, each contained enough Tylenol that when combined together with the failing liver, created a toxic Tylenol overdose. Now, when
Sheesh.
that happens, I take it instantaneously. I take the medicine. Last thing I know, I remember seeing black as I hit my head. The head injury did not catapult me into coma at that time, but it did knock me somewhat unconscious. My family comes home and finds me. I am purple head to toe. I'm swelling up at rapid speeds. When the liver fails that quickly, the bile's released rapidly. So within a matter of moments, it looked like I probably put on 20 pounds or so. And I'm screaming in pain, although no one could get through to me as I wasn't fully conscious. So I was helicoptered at that point from the local hospital, which had no record for me, to the hospital I was to be treated at in forthcoming days. And so my coma, my near death experience begins in the ICU of Hopkins.
Wow. And you were like 29, you said at this time?
I was 29 years old, and at this point, I'm diagnosed with systemic organ failure of the lungs, kidneys, and liver. I had hit the head at such a velocity that the brain activity was extremely low. So from ICU, before my ND actually begins, my family is warned there is likely a 1% or less chance that she will organically wake up. And if she does, she will likely be brain dead. So they were being
Okay,
prepared
yeah.
for this as I launch into my near death experience.
And then with your near death experience, you could your religion, you were like Catholic, right? Like you were you Catholic? Like what was your religious background?
At that time, at best, I would have said I was a recovering Catholic and an agnostic. I had grown up I had grown up deeply, deeply religious in a Sicilian Roman Catholic family. I went to parochial school from the time I was 3 until I was 18. And I did one of my graduate degrees in a Jesuit college. So there had been a lot of Catholic influence in my childhood. However, as a young intuitive child, which I was even before my NDE, I was very shamed and ostracized for talking about angels and things that weren't not necessarily the way they were described in the good books. Therefore, I learned at an early age to keep my intuitive capacities and my communication with spirit realms quiet because it was stigmatized and I was basically told it was witchcraft and devil's magic.
So you already had like a knowing of spirit
Mm-hmm.
before your experience, and you just knew it, like no one taught you, like it was just something that you innately sort of remembered,
It was something I
maybe.
remembered, something I organically communicated with. It felt as natural as like coloring, as a child.
Wow.
It was just something I
Wow.
was connected to and saw.
Do you think like we all have that as children?
I know we all have that as children. As someone that works with children and has two of my own, the reality is that most of our world shuts it down at such an early age that the language and the ease and the comfort with it is often shut down.
But yours didn't get shut down, even though you were Catholic. And I'm sure, like, did your parents, like, your parents were probably like, she's just like, how did your parents react to that, to you being like this sort of intuitive child?
They didn't know much what to do with me as a child, as I was extremely shy, but then I could like read people and I would like blurt that out occasionally, things that were way beyond my like 3 to 7 year old self. So for a
Yeah.
while, I kept those gifts intact. But the more that I realized it like shocked my family, like a perfect example I can remember where I knew my mom was disgusted by what I had done was I was about 12 years old and my grandfather had been estranged on my maternal side from the family. And yet I heard the Beatles song Yesterday come on, and I walked into my mom's room and I was like, he's dead. He just left. And my mom's like, what? And the phone rang. And a second later, it was our aunt. And she said, your father just died. And my mom looked at me like, like I had done something really evil. And all I had done was communicate what I felt when he
Yeah.
transitioned, and that he had done it with love, but it scared her to the point that she looked at me like I was terrifying her, like I'd done something bad. And it was at that point that the 12-year-old me started to really take all that in and suppress it because I didn't
Okay.
want to hurt or offend anyone else. And that becomes an ongoing lesson that continues post NDE, where it's, do you trust this or do you not? Is this of service or is this doing harm? Because again, the world
Ah,
was reflecting back to me that maybe it wasn't normal, and all I wanted to be was normal and loved, as
right.
all children do.
Interesting. So when you were in the ICU and you left your body, was it like a shock or was it surprise to you when that happened, since you were sort of familiar
Yeah,
with that side?
I was familiar, but again, remember, I kind of have what in psychology we call reaction formation. So I had been a highly intuitive child. I had deeply believed in all of this. I'd been artistic and expressed it. And then suddenly I shut it down in my teenage years. And then I go into a very scientific oriented way of being with psychology and trying to study human behavior and do it the traditional way, And so by the time I'm in ICU, again, I'm agnostic. I don't complete deny. I always knew there was something, but because it didn't fit any of the profiles I had been taught, and I had a very strong distaste for organized religion, having grown up in the Catholic Church and really witnessed the hypocrisy and the lack of respect for the feminine, which never really sat well with me. So by the time I'm in ICU and I'm catapulted out of my body, there's this moment that's very playful and very earth realm where I'm almost like a child witnessing myself come out. I don't realize
Interesting.
though it's myself. I'm looking down and I see all these doctors and they're wearing like yellow, and they had purple gloves on, and there's hazmat suits, and I'm like curious about why they're wearing these colors. And I mean, I was cognizant enough to be like, they're wearing Lakers colors and I'm not in Los Angeles.
Right, right.
Just like silly,
Interesting.
playful stuff. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, who are they working on? And I'm like getting closer because, again, remember the swelling? I didn't recognize my
Yeah.
body. So I get closer and
Ah,
it's like, oh, that's me. And there's
okay.
this moment of like, I'm still in the earth realm. I'm still connected to this being. So there's almost like a possession or ownership or attachment. And I want to connect with the body and help the body and be with the body.
Okay.
And at this moment of this personalization that I'm taking ownership of, all of a sudden I'm just bolted out of that space. And I mean, it happened so fast. There's nothing to compare it to but the speed of light. I go from this earth realm, this really, ICU space, to boom into a space that I can only describe as the cosmos. It looked and felt and expressed itself much the way that a really high resolution NASA image presents on the ground here. It was pockets of intense blackness, but everything had beautiful poetry, movements, and portals of light, colors unlike anything I've ever seen on this earth to date, just intensities, frequencies. Everything was in movement, and yet it was fluid. Everything spoke through vibration or sense. You were feeling, you were sensing, you were knowing, and all were co occurring. There was no communication in a traditional sound way of being. And yet, everything had this eminence, this vibration you could feel palpitating from it. So there was a sense of sound and movement and light, but nothing in traditional language like we use here on Earth.
And this place, like it was just it was just darkness that it like
It was dark was the background. So it was almost like being
okay.
this beautiful enveloping void, but the void is dancing with all of these orchestras of light that are coming through at different frequencies and different intensities. And for me, as I come into this space, the first three lights that come to me are three what I call angels. Others might call them celestial beings. Others might call them light beings. To me, they had the frequency, the resonance, the unconditional love of the same types of energies I had encountered as a child. And that's what becomes so welcoming. I look at these light beings and I see the same beautiful amethyst, violet, this beautiful ruby, this beautiful emerald, and these pockets of this very beautiful cobalt blue that are kind of dancing through. And these light beings, I knew, and again, this is part of the language there, is this inner knowing, this telepathy that just happens. It's like, boom, you feel it and you know it and you're with it. You're in that frequency. I knew upon coming into the eminence of these light beings that they were the same lights that had danced around me and communicated as a child. And in that familiarity, I felt safe, as if suddenly all of the discomfort of earth, all of the traumas that had occurred here, all of the disqualified vibrations, the lack of harmony in my childhood and with my family of origin, it made sense because I was back with these beings who intuitively understood me, who intuitively protected me, and beyond that, loved me simply for the light I admit, simply for what and who I am, which is not, unfortunately, the experience I had as a child and a young person on this earth walk.
And so these were your guardian angels. And you describe them as, like you said, orbs or like emeralds. Like they weren't like, how usually we see angels like on TV, they're these
Yeah.
like, figures with wings and just like really angelic, but they were
They were light,
orbs.
pure light. And they had different ways that they presented it, but basically it was light that was in constant movement and it would come in and out in its like intensity. And sometimes it looked like a hole, green, and sometimes it was like a billion little pieces of green, but constantly just in this movement, this organic dance. Yet it held a unique frequency. Each color had its own way of communicating, its own way of being.
Wow. And what did they, communicate to you?
Well, I immediately recognized them and thanked them for being with me. And they had let me know that they had always been with me and that I had never been alone. And no one is actually alone, that we all come in with these light teams and that they're organic and unique to each of us, and that they would support me through the journey in this space. They didn't call it heaven. They didn't call it the cosmos. They just let me know that I was pretty much in the home of the infinite, and that this was a place where all souls were born and all souls would come to reunite.
Interesting.
And there was this magnetic, this beautiful, 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 far more crystalline white with just hues of violet light that started pulling me forward as they're really allowing information to come through. And that's really the best way to describe it. It's as if like a buffet of light or knowing or intelligence comes through, and what you resonate with, what speaks your frequency, your truth, it kind of comes into your own orbit, your own field, and you know it. You just digest it. You become it. Like anything you felt in that space, you became.
Okay.
But it's all of high frequency. So it's almost like there's this buffet of love and bliss and ecstasy and communion and, coherence. And you get to kind of surf these light waves and choose which ones you want to emanate. And as I
Interesting.
was, dancing through this, and they're giving me all of these different tastes and opportunities to experience these different colors and frequencies of light, there is this purging of the human. There's a purging of the identity of broken, wounded, outcast, lonely, all the things that have been projected by being the other in a family where you weren't like
And the
everyone
other.
else. It was
Right.
suddenly like this is just being wiped off by this higher vibrational being. And in that, there weren't tears or sadness or anything of that, but there was a release of a density, of a heaviness that I had been carrying throughout this earth walk that was suddenly gone. So although I was light and I was not the same frequency as them, but definitely a light being of some form, suddenly there was a lightness of being that my human had never known. So it's almost as if they were bathing me in light as I approached this other light.
Like
Unlike
you were getting purged of like your human
just
role.
all of this stuff coming off. And the
Yeah.
identity with Brooke as a person, or Brooke as a narrative, or Brooke as the, traumatized kid or whatever, all that stuff just starts to disintegrate. And as I'm approaching this beautiful source, creator, God light, whatever you want to call it, again, they didn't use language. Everything's just this unconditional love. As I'm approaching it, I want to merge. I want to become one with this light. And the pool, it's like you're being gravitationally magnetized to this light. And at the same time that that's happening, there's all these other images that I'm being flooded with. But when I say flooded, it's like in the most rhythmic, welcoming, warm way. All of these images. And as I'm approaching this magnetic light and wanting to become one with it, the angelics make it very clear. You have the opportunity to return to this. This is the light from which all things come, and all
Okay.
things return, and you are a fractal of that light, as is all things. However, you can return now or you can return later. You have to choose.
They gave you a choice.
I
Okay.
got a choice in my scenario, and you have to remember my body's lingering. I'm comatose. I'm not fully dead. I didn't flatline. Okay. I was comatose 3.5 days. So this is somewhere during that 3.5 day journey. There's no time or space over there. So it's hard to say when this occurs. Yet they allow me to know that I have a choice. And as I'm contemplating the magnitude of that choice, because this light tastes so yummy and all I want to do is like
Yeah.
merge with this delicious field, there's this download of this image of the earth. And the earth is different than I've ever seen her. She's glowing. And not only is she glowing, this the same beautiful white light that's emanating out of this source light, she's surrounded by all of these hands. And the hands are all kind of like this. They're not touching, but they're emanating this citrine colored light, this beautiful gold, what I would call the Christ light. And so these hands are unified around the earth, emanating this light. And when I see that, all of a sudden I keep getting this number 10, 10, 10, 10. I don't understand what the 10 means, and they don't clarify. I just keep seeing 10. And that's
Yeah.
when spirit tells me, you can go back. It will get harder, but ultimately you will be part of that vision that you just saw.
Of like
Of
part
the
of the
hands of
earth
lights,
is
yes, all around the earth. And I don't know what any of this means. And, being a curious person that's still somewhat connected to the core personality, I ask and they say, you will understand, but you have to make a choice. And I'm just like, okay, of course I want to go to the yummy light still. But then there's this part of me that's like, but those hands, it's like, that's why I came here. And there's some sort of soul recognition that all of the stuff, and one of my guardian angels does communicate this, that like all of the trauma, all the suffering, even what you're going back for, is all to get you to be part of those hands around the earth and the earth changing. And there was also the knowing from another one of the angels that if I chose to stay, I was inherently going to come back and repeat some of these lessons because they needed to be
ah
fulfilled. And so at that
yeah,
point, I'm like, I'm not going through any of that all over again. Like, I'll go back and finish it, but I'm not going to repeat all that,
like start all over.
And
Do
so,
you
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, do you think that you were given a choice because of like sort of where you were earthly in terms of, not being quite dead, but at the same time, on the cusp of, being alive? Like, do you think that's why you were given that choice to whether you come back or go to the light?
It's hard to say. I really feel that the oversoul, which each of us has its unique blueprint and its timeline and all of those things. So it's possible that I just had it served, my full, expression of this earth walk.
Of
But it
this?
could be
Okay.
that I was so close to either that they gave
Yeah.
me. They don't give everyone a choice. So it's
Yeah, I was about to say some people they don't give a choice. Well, actually no. I've heard people that the choice is kind of similar to yours. Is you can either go back as Brooke
yeah.
or you can go back as someone else and start all over again. Like you just
So yeah.
like that's kind of and that's is that really a choice?
Exactly, exactly. So it's hard for me to say. All I know is that they did give me the opportunity. And once I decide, okay, I'm gonna go back to that body and I'm gonna figure out what 10 means and I'm gonna figure out what these hands of light mean and I'm just here for it. All of a sudden, it's like the vastness of this huge cosmos like space is a little bit overwhelming because the direction I was oriented in towards the creator light suddenly is not the way I'm going. And so I say
Okay.
to them, how do I get back? I don't really know how to get back and how do I do this? Everything's just light. And they tell
Yeah.
me to look for the light unlike any other. And when I think about that with my human mind now, I'm like, well, the source light was unlike any other. But they meant from the lights I was with. Look like the light for the light unlike any other. So I start looking around for lights that are different frequencies than the ones I've been in
Okay.
communication with. So it's like I've got the source light, I've got the angels who've been like flying around with me. Now I'm looking for this new light. And so I see these,
Fluorescent light.
yeah, that's what it ends up becoming. But I see these two other lights, and on my way towards the next light that I see, I dance into the realm of these lights, but they're emitting a really different frequency. Like all the other lights, when you would come into resonance with them, it's like they lent you their power, or they lent you their love, or they held you. Okay. But when I come into the frequency of these other lights, it's kind of like we're mirroring each other. And there's not really communication. I'm not getting the downloads. I'm not getting hit with the knowledge. And I have this like weird feeling that I want to hold these two lights, but I don't know what they are. And I try to talk to them and they say
Interesting.
nothing to me. So I'm just like, interesting. But I make note that there was this very beautiful indigo and there was this very beautiful bright green. And then I'm like, okay, well, those clearly weren't the lights. Keep redirecting me. I keep going. And then all of a sudden I see this piercing, awful, horrific light, and I follow it. And next thing I know, I'm opening my eye, and it's the flashlight from a nurse checking my vitals.
Wow.
And I'm back in
Wow.
the body, back in the body.
Did you ever get understanding of what that other light that was like sort of mirroring you, what that was?
I did, but it would not happen until 3 years after coma. I had been told, due to the organ damage and the extent of some of my recovery, that I would never have children. And I ended up having two boys. And the first one was born 3 years
Oh.
later. And at his birth, he came out with a glowing indigo aura.
Oh my gosh.
And at the second one, at his birth, he came out with the glowing green. And I knew instantaneously that they helped guide me back to the body, but they didn't communicate as they were still in that in between themselves.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. You know what? That's like, did you ever see the Disney movie Soul? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what this is reminding me of. Like that whole part where everyone is just like these little like formless creatures just bouncing around waiting to come to earth. Like waiting to get their turn.
Yes.
Wow, that is amazing.
And
Wow.
the best part about those two is, like, we'll talk about after effects perhaps a little bit, but when I returned to my body, everything I believed was radically undone in an instant, because my after effects turn on, and suddenly all these things that I would have pathologized as a clinical psychologist, I was taught to pathologize them, seeing things, getting communications from other realms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
All this stuff comes on automatically, and it's fighting my scientific brain. And so I went through multiple periods of dark nights of the soul where I just wanted to
Mm.
turn it all off. I just wanted to go back to normal. I didn't want to believe any of this. I wanted to think it was just some dream or whatever else. And each time I was really off kilter with my navigational path for my soul's orientation, I was kind of stepping into dangerous trajectory. That's when my sons incarnated. So both times it was kind
Wow.
of like they were the cosmic redirect. Like, nope, we're not doing that.
Like you have a mission, and you know your soul has a mission, and you're going to accomplish it. Like
Yes.
that's beautiful. It's like, so it's like your kids like came as those lights to make sure you complete your mission that your soul is supposed to do.
Yes, and
Wow.
at the same time, they've been like the highest and best emotionally corrective experience. Like my eldest just turned 12, but he's been speaking of his intuitive gifts since he was 3. And
Yeah.
as someone who had it shamed out of them and told it was bad and all of these things, to have a child who comes in with this high expression of the gifts, who openly acknowledges them, who demonstrates them, and then to have the capacity and the new orientation and the emotional intelligence to instead shame that child or shut them down, to actually encourage them, that's been very healing for my own inner children.
Wow.
And so it's been such a beautiful gift. And then the other one that has the green aura, I call him my little earth seed, because he grounds us. We need the grounding. So that's why he came in with the green. And he's very practical, and he's kind of like the opposite. So I gave one a Sanskrit name because he's much more connected to the cosmos and heaven. And then the other one has a Viking name because he's much more connected to the earth. So, and I say they balance me so that I know how to bring heaven onto earth.
That is beautiful.
Thank
Like,
you.
do you have an idea of what your soul mission is, or like how you're going to be a part of like sort of that new earth that you saw?
For me, it's always been, and I didn't intuitively understand this till more recently when the 10 came into the picture.
Yeah.
It was 2020, 10 years after coma, that I was guided to
Mm.
start speaking about my NDE. And that's when Spirit made it very clear that those hands of light would be coming into the future of the current world. Like the world was slowly awakening,
Wow.
and it was going to need people to hold that frequency and help the earth rise. And at the time, I just figured that meant, oh, being part of a collective of way showers and we were all going to speak out. But what I ended up learning through my own wounding and through my own training as a clinician, and then also as a survivor of pretty prolific violence, was that so many of the women that are here to be teachers, to be anchors of the divine feminine and its return to the earth, have not been able to do it because we have been unable to purge and to clear and to truly unconditionally love the self. So for me, as someone who was taught the divine father and the patriarchy and all of those things, it's been the reclamation of the divine mother, the unconditional love, that which sees light and darkness and holds both. That's been really where my work has been, and in raising two boys who are balanced between the masculine and
How about
feminine,
that?
because that
Yeah.
divine feminine is anchored through each part of every single person, whether you're biologically whatever, however you identify. We each have those critical components. But what I saw time and time again in my personal work with the women that come to me, and then my work in psychology and my personal work in healing, is that we have this very deep feminine rage in the earth, in the
Wow.
culture, in the self, in the masculine, everywhere. And until it's given a voice, until it's allowed to purge, and until that rage is met with unconditional love, it
Right.
cannot be healed.
Mm.
So I'm
Wow.
really here to hold space for that and to let people know, as someone who, is a complex trauma survivor for 3 out of the 4 decades of my life, it's okay to roar as you're healing. Look at the earth right
Yeah.
now. She's roaring.
Yeah, it's definitely roaring right now.
And that's part of what it is. Healing is messy. Like if you're going to organically heal, you have to be willing to be like a butterfly. You have to go in a cocoon and fall apart. That is the holiest part of healing.
Right.
And if you can fall apart, if you can allow the new to form, there will be a transformation, there will be an alchemy, but you don't get to become out a butterfly unless you embrace the mess.
Without that. Wow. Wow. Let's talk about some of the work that you do now. Like, so if a like I guess describe what a person would be feeling that would come to you for help, and then how you would help them.
It there's a huge gamut to the type of folks I help now. To be honest, I formed my personal practice that I have here and now because of what psychology did not afford me in persons like me. When I came out from my NDE and I was able to see auras and to see the quantum field and have medical intuition and have certain types of abilities just organically come on, if I had gone to a clinical psychologist and disclosed much of this, I would have been pathologized. I would have been labeled
Yeah.
schizophrenic, effective at best, schizophrenic possibly. Okay. Just because so many things are outside the norm. That led me, as I said, into a very dark night of the soul. It led to bouts of suicidality, it just not wanting to be here, all of the things, because my own brain, my own way of being was against me. It seemed like the whole system was against me. Eventually, through studying different metaphysical arts, working with shamans across the world, indigenous shamans, I realized that these gifts were available to all persons, and they were really part of our inner capacity that's been turned off by modern living and has
Yeah.
been denied by the dogmatic scientists.
Yeah, I was about to say it's denied because people don't want to believe you when you're saying that you're feeling these things. They'll call you crazy.
But as I was witnessing with my neurodivergent eldest son, more and more people were incarnating with these gifts intact. And as
Yeah.
that volume comes up, more and more people are going to need support. I was also aware of the ascension process and how the earth was transforming. And so I decided to take a leap of faith and I left clinical psychology. I walked away from my credentials, all of that, and formed an organic multidisciplinary practice where psychology is at the core, but it's also
Yeah.
blended with earth sciences. It's blended with metaphysics. It's blended with quantum physics. It's blended with neuroscience. There's all paths are welcome, but it's kind of like a play box of what tools are we going to use for this person. So my practice began in my desire to help other mystical experiencers accept, process, and integrate their gifts so that they may make them service versus wounding. Because what I had seen in myself and to others was that, it's very hard to discern actual mental illness from the way some people integrate their gifts,
Yeah.
because they're
Yeah.
shamed and they're stigmatized, and so they start turning that anger or that shame towards themselves, and then it does become what looks like on the surface traditional mental illness. I
Yeah.
knew there was a purification point, a tipping point between those two extremes, and if you can get in there at that purification point, you can save lives. And as spirit had helped save mine over and over and over again through my children and other earth angels, I just wanted to pay that forward. And so the people that come to me now are typically people that have been in the traditional mental health system or the traditional spiritual system or the traditional religious system, often all of the above. And they have not found their voice. They have not found their community. A lot of times there's been more harm or trauma put upon them because they don't fit black or white into any of these
Yeah.
systems. So my job as a space holder is to really get intimate with them as far as what frequency they're broadcasting and why, because there's always a why.
Yes.
Even the energy field attempts to protect itself and defend. And so utilizing my gifts, I go in and I see the field and we work on the field immediately. That's the first and foremost, cleaning up the energy body, really getting the subtle bodies back into alignment, and then looking at the causation. But you never want to try to cure anything without first holding space. It's just like a child. You don't go in to correct before you connect. You connect, then you correct.
Ah,
And that's what a lot of modern
man.
medicine's missing. They're going in with this, like, let's fix this, but we're not
Yeah.
ever meeting what's going on and what's causing all of the dysfunction.
To
So my
understand the why.
yeah, so my job is to get intimate with the energy. Go where the energy's loudest and be with that, connect with that. And then once we hold space for that, it will tell us what it needs. Because everything,
Yeah.
whether it's in the psyche, whether it's in the physical body, everything wants to return to love. The frequency of love is the most healing curative factor in the world. However, because of our traumas, because of our histories, because of the world we live in, the food we eat, the things we consume, et cetera, the relationships we're in, most of us
Yeah.
have lost our resonance with our divine blueprint. Most of us have lost the connection to the God or the light within. And so my job is to move some of the muck so that the person can begin to reflect their own light back. And then that light becomes the anchor through which they self-heal. I am simply the mirror, the teacher, the guide. They are the healer.
It almost sounds like self-love. Like
It
it's
is, but you have to make the space for the capacity
yeah.
for self-love.
Yeah. Like
Because
real self-love. Cause I think that, you know, when we say self-love, a lot of the times people are like, oh, I'm gonna go get my nails done and go on vacation and,
exactly.
read a book by the pool. And that's not really self-love for real. Like,
For sure. I mean, my shadow came up to play recently and it was not pretty. It was like some inner children, like wounded, shadowy stuff. And they came up. And of course, like my ego just wants to sweep in and be like, okay, moving
yeah,
on. And it's like, no, they're screaming and kicking and hitting because they want to be held.
yeah, yeah,
So it's not my job to shame them or deny them or like bypass them. If I want to
yeah.
truly love myself, then I need to cry and rage with them.
Yeah, you can if you love yourself, you love all parts of yourself. Like you love the like I've started I brush my teeth with the opposite hand or whatever just to, get, just to understand cuz they said I just seen this on TikTok and they said if you brush your teeth with the opposite hand and then stare at the mirror and say I love you 10 times, it's reprogramming your subconscious. And for me, it's like basically saying like because I'm first waking up in the morning, I'm brushing my teeth, I don't look the best, I'm not necessarily presented to the world, but saying like I love you, like
Mhm.
you're fine even this way, I think is helpful to me, in just regular life because that shadow part of you does come up, and you want to suppress it. You want to be like, no, you're not supposed to think this and not, but it's like, no, like I love you too. Like you deserve to be heard too. It's nothing wrong with you either. Like,
Exactly. And you know, a part of the big the influx of information that's coming humanity's way is that, you know, we've been really indoctrinated to believe that we're like this one thing, you know, like we're like this
yeah,
one person, this one psyche. But the reality is we're multidimensional beings, and we have a multitude of parts that are constantly spinning and churning, and we might identify with the core presentation, but the reality is we're receiving information in the energy body and through the emotional body and the mental body at all times. So it's imperative that we're honoring all of those vestitudes within us.
so would you say that's sort of like the start of someone that, I didn't have an NDE, or, I don't want to have an NDE, honestly, you know, but I want to experience
Mhm.
angels. I want to experience, the spiritual realm. Like, so is that the start of it? Like, how can someone, I don't want to say have your powers, but but how can someone get that spiritual gift, or tap into that spiritual gift that you seem to have?
It's, you know, it's innate in all of us, but a lot of it is the removing of all the blockage, you know, like particularly the pineal gland,
Okay.
removing all of that. But prior to the detoxification of the body, which I do feel is really, really, really important, you can simply ask. You know, I make me an open vessel. I want to connect with my guides. Allow me to connect with my guides, because the reality is, whether you see it or sense it or feel it the way that I do because of my gifts, you have the capacity through the pineal gland, through your heart, which has 3 levels to its chakras, and through the upper chakra system to access this all. You don't have to see it, you know, or feel it the way that I do, but you have that access. Part of the limitation for most people is the belief that they don't have it. So it can be something as simple as, if you know you believe you don't, asking for the belief to be removed. And beliefs love really simple practices. They are evidence based. So if, like, you know, like you were just saying with the self-love thing, if you make a conscious practice to negate a limiting belief, you know, like a lot of people
Yeah.
think, I am not lovable. Okay. Well,
Mm.
instead of saying I'm not lovable, say I am lovable a couple times a day, and then ask the universe, ask creator, ask God, whatever language you prefer to use, to show you signs that you are lovable. And every time write it down, because the mind will reprogram faster if you show it concrete examples of why it's wrong. The ego starts losing its superpower of telling you old stories when you're documenting 10 times a day. Oh, that stranger smiled at me. Oh, that. Da, 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 da. So it's a very easy way to reprogram limiting beliefs, is to say the exact opposite and then say, show me proof, and document it. And as you experience that proof, be in alignment with it. So if the
Yeah.
belief is, I'm not psychically open or I'm not intuitive, then ask for the opposite. And when you get your confirmation that your intuition's right, or that you're connected to something greater, or that love is in your field, write that down, because you can shift the belief very rapidly if you actually engage in and work with it. Most people just are like, oh, I've always felt that way, I'm just going to push it away. You know, and then it just grows and grows and grows and grows and grows. But for most of us, it's simply that we've been told we cannot access these inner realms, or that it's for experts, or it's for experiencers, or whatever the bias is.
Yeah.
There's always a
Yeah.
narrative. But remember, the mind's a storyteller. What you are attempting to connect with is way above the lower mind where the stories are coming from. So if you can step into that higher vastness, the infinite, the cosmic mind, which is really what you're opening up to connect to these realms, then you have access to it, because all beings have access to it. Okay. It's just about accepting and nurturing and being present. And just like with the self love issues, I'm not advocating anyone weaponize themselves against their limiting beliefs. It's more about,
Yeah.
I see you, I hear you, how may I hold you, and how may we shift you? But again, coming at it from love, coming at it from that divine feminine, where it's never going to be met with force. It's all about flow. And remember that just like a flower blossoming, this is all a process of becoming.
Yeah.
You know, the flowers, they get this beautiful love from the world when they blossom, but the truth is they will and die after that. It's in
Yeah.
the blossoming itself that the actual essence of the flower, the beauty, is expressed. It's the same with the soul. If we get to that ultimate blossoming, we transition, we go on.
Yeah.
It's in the process of becoming the highest expression of our energy, of our blossom, that we are able to serve others, that we're able to alchemize pain, that we're able to actually give off a vibration and a frequency that heals. And that's what we're all here for.
Wow. Well, Brooke, that was amazing. Like, I loved how you broke that down. Wow.
Thank you.
Um, I'm gonna have, I'm gonna have your website and everything in the description, but definitely tell the people, where they can reach you, and if they want to connect and if they want to heal and they need your help, for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure. My website is www.brooke with an E, Grove, Grove, healing, all one word.com. And you can find me on Instagram as well at Brooke Grove Writing. And just reach out to me. Email's best. I will be honest, I get a ton of emails, but I always go by energetic resonance and what I know is a divine fit. And if I can and I'm
Yeah.
called, I will get back to you as soon as I am possible. Please be patient. I do get them from around the world, and people sometimes take that personally. It's not personal. But you can reach out to me and just tell me a little bit about what's going on. I do want to say, I say this all the time, but no one listens. Please don't send me like a 60-page narrative, because that's what makes it hard to get through everything. Just tell me
Yeah.
what's really going on for you. If I'm able to connect with it and talk to my guides and your teams, I'm all here for it. I will always write back when I can. I just love hearing from everybody. I'm not very active on Instagram, but I do keep a spiritual presence there just to like anchor out good energies. So if you want to join me there, you're welcome to. And I do speak all over the place. I will be doing Portal to Ascension, I believe, I want to say July 19th. If you're into learning more about the ascension process, I will be speaking in their Great Remembrance Conference. I also speak for IANS, International Association of Near Death Studies, yearly, and their local chapters. I will be at their Chicago conference in late August, speaking with a dear friend on soul family and soul communications. And I do a lot of local chapters across the world. So just check out my website. If you want to stick with events, then I would also follow on Instagram. And I would love to hear from you guys. Thank you so much, Erica, for having me. It's been fun.
Thank you for being on. I know I learned so much. I'm sure the audience definitely learned a lot. Per the usual, make sure you guys like and subscribe. Everything Vision Rebirth on all platforms. My name is E. You can find me at _real E in all platforms. And thank everyone for listening. Again, Brooke, thank you for your time. And this is Vision Rebirth. And cut.